Welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast, where our job is to help you build visibility, professional credibility, and connection with your ideal client by putting the human at the center of innovative marketing, so you can build and strengthen an engaging, enduring relationship with your ideal clients. I'm Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and I'm honored that you're here with me. If you haven't joined our wonderful marketing transformation community yet, go to innovabuzz.co and collect your free gift as well. Do subscribe to the show and also leave a review because it helps others find us. Let's get into today's masterclass on this InnovaBuzz podcast.
When it comes to the customer, we definitely want to explore the CX or the customer journey and make sure that that is still working for our existing customers and not just our new customers. It's the existing ones that have been here. They're kind of like your change supporters, they're the ones that are advocating for you, and to proactively service them and to offer just a day or half a day at least to go spend time with them and see how they're using your product, and not just have it be between the CEO and the CEO, but actually have somebody in the front line that's using the product or the service and watch and see how many times it clicks. How many times do they have to click before they can get to whatever your solution is?
Welcome back. I hope you've had an awesome week so far. If you haven't yet listened to my recent conversations with business operations architect Sidel Stewart and with author, speaker and founder of Smart Hustle Media, Ramon Ray, then do go listen into them. They're well worth listening to, but only after you've listened to today's conversation. I'm really excited to have on the InnovaBuzz podcast today as my guest, Cantey. She's a tenacious connector and a recovering banker, as she describes herself. She's a leadership coach helping high-potential managers turn into senior leaders. Her sales program for business-to-business selling is creating exceptional results. 18 months ago, Catherine retired from corporate banking. She was traveling 60% of the time, spending time with the C-suite and helping others grow their business. She decided that had to change. She took some calculated risks that led to her transition from corporate to self-employment. Today, she provides leadership coaching, training around messaging and use of LinkedIn, and strategic planning. In our conversation today, Catherine talked to me about using reflection to know when you're ready for change. We talked about creating small wins that form the foundation of sustainable change and how to add value to others by teaching them to breathe. Without further ado, then let's fly into the hive and get the buzz from Cantey. Hi, I'm your host Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and I'm excited to welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast today, all the way from Columbia, South Carolina in the USA, Cantey, who's a leadership coach helping high-potential managers turn into senior leaders. Welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast, Catherine. It's a real privilege to have you here as my guest.
Thank you so much for having me. This is fun, how the internet connects us across the pond. So thank you.
That's right. Yes, it's amazing, isn't it, that we can do this in this day and age, and it's particularly important, I guess, in times when travel is restricted because of the pandemic.
Yes, it has opened up a lot of new opportunities for us.
That's right. Now, before we start talking about all things leadership, what is it that drives you to do what you do?
I've been studying a lot of this, and I've learned that sometimes reflection is the best way to kind of figure out where I've been and where I'm going. And this past week, I stumbled across a word of just transformation. And I think the curiosity has led me throughout my career, but really what I'm going back for time and time again, no matter what the project is, I'm looking for a transformation. I'm looking to help other people find their transformation. And that seems to be what my latest lessons are as I reflect on my past and where my future's going.
Yeah, I love the word transformation. I mean, we use it in our promotion. We talk about transformational marketing. So it's really all about change, isn't it? So talking about change, what is it that I mean, a lot of people find change very challenging. What is it that prevents people from making changes that might lead to that transformation?
I think first of all, we need to realize, are we really ready? Do we feel like we're ready for the change? And if we're not ready for the change, there's a lot of people not, and we need to be okay and just celebrate the fact that they're here and maybe they just aren't ready for it. So first step is just acknowledge that you are or are not ready for creating the change. And then once they do decide, I think a lot of folks, and myself included, get overwhelmed on what the big end goal is and how are we going to break it down and accomplish that. And so it tends to be overwhelming. And I think habit kicks in at that point, and we just go back to what we've always done. And the change tends to linger and becomes I could have when I was younger, and never happens for the individual looking for that change.
I'm a big fan of James Clear's work, and he talks about atomic habits and small habits driving changes, and he talks about focusing on the process. One of the things I find when I find that big change or big task and feel a sense of overwhelm is just looking at the first step. And I think it's in his book Atomic Habits. He talks about if you do the first step, you've already won. You can already celebrate the success, and then focus on the process. And I apply this now to my bike riding, which I normally go out for a bike ride every morning. And now we're in this transition phase going from summertime to wintertime, and it's been a very sudden transition this year. So there's been some very cold mornings, and often I feel just roll over, I don't want to go out for a bike ride. So going for a bike ride is the goal. But when I say just get up out of bed and put your bike clothes on, and that's a win. And then, once I get to that stage, I say just take the bike out of the garage, and that's a win. And if I do that, I usually end up doing a ride.
There's so much truth to that, and that's such a great book. I love Atomic Habits, and once we just take the first step, get out of bed and maybe put on the walking shoes if you don't feel like going for a bike ride, but just put something on and step outside and put an extra layer on. And, a lot of people reward themselves with good books or podcasts that they can listen to on their exercise, and they save that for their exercise time. And is creating rewards within these opportunities of change that I think can help kind of kick us off in the right direction and create momentum and celebrate the small wins along the way. And once you get in that winning pattern, it's so hard to stop. Everybody wants to cheer you on and keep you going. And people get excited when others are winning and they want to be a part of it. So yeah, just get out of bed and put one foot in front of the other. That's a start for sure.
Okay. Now, one of the things you talk about is building visibility being vital for growth. So talk to us a little bit more about that and how that works in the context of leadership, and particularly for businesses that want to be leaders in their space.
Yeah, so everything starts with yourself first, just like what we did with going for a bike ride or exercising or getting out of the bed. Everything starts with you and me individually. And if you want to create that change and that presence and that influence, you need to first acknowledge you're going to be doing that. And then from there, we want to be able to engage those around us. And this works in your personal life as well as your professional life. And you want to enroll your stakeholders in strategic conversations. And when people hear strategic, they sometimes think that, oh, this is going to be a long, tedious conversation. And really a strategic conversation could just be dropping a few hints that are going to open up the door for the next conversation that we're looking for. And being able to collaborate across, the table, across the organization, breaking through a lot of these silos and traditions, and being able to bring stakeholders over and ask them for what their feed forward is, meaning, what are one or two things I can do better going forward? And then just stopping and listening to what they have to say and not arguing with them and simply saying thank you is a great way to get the conversation started. We don't want to commit to anything. We don't want to argue, like I said earlier, but we just want to take this information and process it and figure out where this is going to take us to the next step. And I think a lot of times we're thinking we got to get to the finish line in the first conversation. And really, we just need to listen to where the other person's coming from and assess it and see if it's even something that we can work with. But enrolling stakeholders and bringing stakeholders to the table is huge.
Yeah, that's really golden advice. I was thinking there as you were outlining that process, it kind of comes back to what we were talking about just a moment ago, isn't it? It's like instead of saying I want to bring this person on board to help me achieve this goal, it's how can I start to build a relationship and a dialogue with this person so that I can engage their help. So one step in front of the other.
Yeah.
Okay, and the other thing I know you talk about is professional authority, building professional authority. So what steps do you recommend for somebody that's wanting to build their professional authority? Let's say an individual within an organization, but also businesses as teams.
Yeah, so creating that professional authority or maybe the influence within an organization, I like to think that there's 3 different types of folks that are out there. We have the folks that are like you and me. We're getting out of bed and we're exercising in the morning, or trying to at least, and we're okay with the change. There might be some change we're not crazy about, but, overall, we're okay with it. We're here talking about it at least. So we've got, about 20% of the folks that are okay with the change. And then we also have another 20% who are never going to get out of bed and never going to want to help, and they just are going to resist. But yet there's this difference of this that's in the middle, and these are the skeptics. And the skeptics are going to be in your community. They're going to be in various organizations. They'll even be in the prospects that you're calling on. You're going to find the skeptics. And if we can focus our time and energy on the skeptics, not the people who are always going to be the naysayers, and maybe not so much on the folks that are just like us, because that's real comfortable, and the naysayers kind of suck the life out of us. But let's focus on the folks in the middle, the biggest group, and let's see how can we help create a win for a skeptic and bring them over to our side. And again, these are just small wins along the way, but if you're creating influence or you're looking to create more presence within an organization, you want to be able to bring over more of these skeptics to the work that you're doing to be able to build that rapport within the organization.
Yeah, and I'm thinking there in terms of winning over those skeptics, it comes back to the word transformation. If you can help them transform even in just some small way, that's, first of all, it does build some professional authority in you as an individual, and then also gives them something. So you talk about leading with value and not with what you want. So tell us a little bit more about how you go about that.
Yeah, so I've talked about this a lot, and I think one of my favorite examples is when I was talking to a group of students who were about to graduate from the university, and I said, when I know everybody's looking for a job, and you're ready to get out of college and out of your parents' house, and you just you want to have your own life and your own paycheck, and that's exciting. And what we need to do now at this phase of life is to reach out to people and continue to be authentic and lead with value, and find articles that could be of interest, find information or podcast, books, whatever it may be. And instead of calling someone, a friend, or calling a connection, or calling an interview and leading with, I want a job, or I want a connection, lead with, I saw this article, I read this book, it made me think of you. I'd love to be able to drop it off and grab a cup of coffee and just have a casual conversation. And it's a way to be able to kind of open up the conversation. And it allows you to see, is this somebody that really you want to work with? Before you put the hard press on them that says, I want you to hire me, at least go go see if the waters are warm and see if you even can tolerate them through a coffee, and say, hey, I found this book and I'd love to be able to drop it off and grab a cup of coffee with you. And just leave with value. And it's simple and it's kind, and people respond to it. And if people don't respond to it, then there's something else there. And again, that's just a resistor. And there's so many incredible opportunities out there today. We shouldn't waste our time on these resistors. I know it's human nature to want to transform the resistors, but there's so many other skeptics that are out there that we could focus on and be able to help and work towards that transformation. So don't feel bad if they don't call you back. The timing may not be right now, but it could be later.
Yeah. And you talk about the resistors. I mean, they're the ones that you're probably not going to be able to convince. I mean, it's kind of like the analogy for me is in politics. They focus on the political parties. I mean, our Western democracies traditionally are kind of polarized into two major camps, right? And each camp in their political campaigns, they don't focus on the people that are entrenched in the other camp, and they also don't focus on the people that are entrenched in their own camp. They focus on what they call the swing voters, which is that middle ground, right?
Yeah.
Because they know, they're never going to be able to influence the opposite, the people entrenched in the opposite camp. They don't need to influence the people entrenched in their camp. It's the people in the middle that are going to decide whether the election goes one way or the other.
So true. We see that all the time, don't we?
Yeah. And one of the things, and this happens with business as well, one of the things that frustrates me, because I'm in an electorate in both our state and national parliament where it's a safe seat for one of the parties. And as a result, and it has been for generations. And so as a result, we never really get much attention from the politicians, because all the attention, all the money, all the investment goes into those seats that could go either way. And, it's from both parties from both government. And I think in business, you see that and the telecommunications company, the internet service providers are masters at this. They always offer special deals or special privileges to new customers, and they kind of ignore their loyal customers, which to me is a really bad move. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think there's a lot of truth to that. And I'm thinking of all kinds of examples of how, we focus on that middle section, the skeptic, and, we want to also continue to love those who came and supported us. So when it comes to the customer, we definitely want to explore the CX or the customer journey and make sure that is still working for our existing customers and not just our new customers. It's the existing ones that have been here. They're kind of like your change supporters, they're the ones that are advocating for you, and to proactively service them and to offer, just a day or half a day at least to go spend time with them and see how they're using your product, and not just have it be between the CEO and the CEO, but actually have somebody in the front line that's using the product or the service and watch and see how many times it clicks, how many times do they have to click before they can get to whatever your solution is. And so many times the solutions that we think we need to spend all the R&D on are as simple as sitting with someone who's using your service, a client who's paying you. Look at how they're using your service. Literally sit next to them in a chair and just see how it's working. How's the interface working? How's the experience? And see what the frustration level is or the gratitude level is. And it could cut down on a lot of R&D. And all that information is literally in front of you, and people are paying you for that information. They're paying you for the service, and you can get the information from them. So taking care of that customer and going out and sitting with them and watching them use the service is like gold in your existing client base.
Yeah, now that's worth the price of listening to this podcast just in there. The idea of listening to the customer is kind of common sense. A lot of people talk about it, but going to actually doing it on the ground and just, as you described it, sitting down with the customer, watching them use the product, or even just using the product yourself. I know you talked about the number of clicks on software. That's one thing that really frustrates me, being on the computer a lot. And I always, and I kind of get angry. My wife sort of says, "Oh, you had another one of those software experiences." She knows when I'm starting to talk to myself and get angry and say, "I've just put my name in. How come I have to do it again?" Or I've how many times do I have to click to get through? I want to buy something and I have to click and click and click and then click again.
It just hits us in the wrong way at the wrong time. And then all of a sudden, before you know it, you've stayed up all night Googling who your competition is. And you're like, I'm moving everything tomorrow. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's right. It's that customer experience that people take for granted, that it's easy, and they don't check for themselves how their process works for the customer. And as you say, it is very dangerous if there's a bad experience there particularly at that point of buying or immediately after having bought, because that's where people will then say, "No, I'm going to go and check out the competition."
Yeah, definitely get frustrated easily that way.
All right. One of the things that you also do in your spare time, I guess, not that you have any, is you help build broadband systems or broadband infrastructure in remote communities, in small communities. And I'm really curious as to what prompted you to start that, and how you apply your leadership lessons to that work.
Yeah, thank you for asking about it. It's exciting right now because we are at the part where it's actually being rolled out. So we've made it through the very beginning dream stages of, gosh, do I want to get out of bed? Do I want to put my tennis shoes on today? And it all started with some curiosity, and went to a lunch just to learn about vertical assets. And vertical assets are like water tower and grain bins, things that go into the air. And when you're in a rural or a very spacious area without a lot of metro density and population, you can actually sell real estate on these towers. And the real estate is for telecommunications. And the higher up you go, the better, you can make more money off of that space because it shoots out farther for internet and broadband. So I learned about this, and I knew in my own community we struggled with having reliable broadband. And I just stayed after the lunch and spoke with the gentleman who presented, and said, well, what can we do? And we stayed in touch for a few months, just back and forth, casual conversations, grabbing a coffee, just trying to lead with value each other, just trying to support each other and help each other. And curiosity, again, just allowed me to learn more about this whole transformation of internet and broadband. And we like to think about it much like electricity 100 years ago. We had kerosene lanterns in so many houses, and electricity didn't happen overnight. So you got to run all the wires. And 100 years later, here we are running wires, except for their fiber. And so the curiosity brought us to the next step, which was I needed to pull together various people in our community, and whether it's from education or agriculture, workforce, or workforce development, agriculture, telecommunications. And so we pulled these different verticals together and actually asked them, does reliable broadband, is that something that our community needs for the future of us? And despite everybody's background and difference of opinions, that was the one thing we could all agree on. So from there, I reached out to the only telecommunication provider that was eligible for this particular grant, and we went for it. It was probably, it took a full year before we heard back because, they only announced one grant at a time for PR reasons, I think. And so we ended up receiving a $12.1 million public and private investment, helping to close our broadband gap, which is now resulting in 256 miles of fiber actually going out into the community. So this is going to have a huge impact on us. And it's not just the 256 miles of fiber But as that fiber is getting closer to other individuals, now once the grant's done, we can start tapping into that fiber to get to even further out to those individuals. So it's almost like a kind of a spider web. You start in the middle and then you run a line and you're able to get that done with the initial grant. And then you can run another line further out on that. So it's much like electricity, and we're pretty excited to see what this impact is going to bring to the community.
That's pretty amazing. I should explore that whole idea with you some more, because I think there's a real need for that in Australia. They did a government national broadband initiative about 5 years ago, and there were the naysayers who felt their own political and basically the old traditional media. You can probably guess who that is. It starts with F, it ends with X, and it's got 3 letters. They basically blocked the thing going ahead as it was planned, which was a proper fibre broadband system. Now we've got this cobbled together system which works moderately well in the major cities, is a disaster outside of the major cities, and in the remote communities is just doesn't work. And then they've got all these various hybrid things with wireless and so on, but none of it is anywhere near state of the art. And also it didn't cost millions of dollars; it cost hundreds of billions of dollars. When they changed government and they stripped it back to the bare bones, they said we're going to save hundreds of billions of dollars on this new system, which they said was going to be better as well. So now we have a system that's worse than the originally proposed one, which was probably only state of the art 10 years ago, and it blew over the original budget for the more expensive version. It blew over that by several $100 billion. So
it's just so much money. It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
You can see why people are resistant to change. It's just overwhelming. And then when you start talking about the money and the impact and the people and it's just like, oh my God, where do we start? Well, you start getting out of bed, one foot in front of the other. But it's just so easy to just say, oh, not today. I got too many other things I got to do.
Yeah, love it. Okay, now you do a 3-week boot camp and an online course associated with that. What does that entail? Because there's lots of things in there that I was really fascinated by.
Thank you. Yeah, so it is a B2B, which is business to business development course. And I've figured out that, after doing this for 20 years, it feels like breathing, you just know what you need to do. And then it dawned on me, not everybody has read all the same books and has been through all those painful customer experiences where you just learn certain things that books can't teach you. And so out of that, I actually created a course, and I thought, well, this will just kind of be a crash course of all my mistakes and things that I've learned. And I decided to break it down into 3 sections. The first section is all about clarifying your message and being able to connect with people, make it easy for them to communicate with you. The second section within that is all about building influence, and it's a lot about what we talked about, of focusing on the skeptics and creating a follow-up process that, you're going to do what you say you're going to do, but, be able to drive that influence within an organization. And then the third section is, especially today, I've invested a lot of time in learning more about LinkedIn and how to maximize that without spending, the rest of your life on LinkedIn, but still be able to communicate with others in a proactive way, in a helpful way, in a lead with value way. So the third section is all about how to leverage LinkedIn and how you can use that to actually control your own network in a proactive way. And I have found that it's been especially helpful during COVID. And, it's allowed me to reach across the world, literally, and start meeting new people that I would not have been able to do otherwise. And there's a lot of good talent out there. And again, don't take it personally if people don't connect on the first time. There could be other stuff going on in their lives. But just, just continue to reach out, be proactive, stay positive, and you might be amazed what opportunities lay in front of you just off of using LinkedIn. So that course is all packaged up, and it's actually a boot camp that can be purchased at any point. It's got all my references and everything in the back. So if you're a detailed person, you can dig deep, or if you want to just hit the high levels and get the takeaways and the small steps that you can execute, those are within the workbook pages of the work.
I love it. Yeah. And it's pretty clear. I'll come back to some of those points in a moment, but you said something at the beginning I thought that was fascinating, and that's it feels like breathing. I think it often takes me, like, customers or people I meet have to ask me 3 or 4 times about something that I then realize that, hey, this comes naturally to me, but other people actually don't know how to do it. And sometimes I think, oh, this is so easy. Doing a video to explain it, or producing a webinar, or maybe even a course, breaking this down into steps seems so trivial to me, and yet it's very much that phenomenon, isn't it? That it's like breathing to me, but somebody else is actually suffocating because they don't know how to breathe.
Yeah. Yeah. And what you're really good at, I'm probably not very good at. And what I'm good at, somebody else may not be good at it. So, we really just need to focus in on the strengths that we all bring to the table and realize that we're not here meant to do everything all the time, and focus in on what comes natural and let that be, and help other people. And if you can make a little bit of money while you're breathing pretty easily and outsource the other stuff that you're like, ooh, I don't want to do that. It kind of makes life a little bit easier to get through.
So how do we kind of recognize those things that we take for granted because it's like breathing? How do we recognize those that we can actually help other people by teaching them how to do it?
Yeah, so I think one thing to do is definitely go back and reflect and look at your calendar even. If you live by your calendar like I do, you have your appointments throughout the day, and just kind of do a color code, red, yellow, green. And just remember, was that conversation easy, or was it challenging, or was it kind of indifferent? And look for the greens that pop up on your calendar. And so maybe you had 3 appointments that were green for the month of March. You're like, man, that was just easy and it breezed through. And then take a look at that and just kind of dig into it and say, why was it easy? Was it the people that I was talking with? Was it the particular topic? Was it the time of the day? What was it that made it just easy and fun? And that's one kind of introspective way to be able to find out maybe what some strengths are. Another book that, since we've been talking about books, that I love is called Strength Finder. And it's just a great way to reinforce what your skills are and be able to see how you can apply them. And personally, I love to be able to give strength finders to high school graduates and college graduates. And I know when I got out of school and you're just kind of overwhelmed and you're not sure what you want to do, but it builds you up, and it may even help you answer some of those interview questions. What are you good at? And you can say, hey, I read a book. It was called Strength Finders, and it says that I'm good at delegating and organizing and carrying through tasks. So, it could even help you get through on an interview question. But that's a really easy read. If you look at your calendar and you don't see any themes, then I'd definitely say check out Strength Finders as another one to find your strength.
Yeah, it is a really good book, and I revisited it recently, and I found that there were some styles that I'd forgotten about because obviously they're not my style. So I didn't pay much attention to them.
Yeah, it's easy. Yeah, I look at it, and some of them I'm like, oh, well, that's obvious. And then some I thought, oh, I never really thought about that. But then when you really pause and kind of reflect and read a little bit more, you're like, well, I guess I could see how that could be a strength. So yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I was having a conversation with one of my clients a couple of weeks back, and it goes back to my hobby, one of my hobbies, which is photography. And I've got a new scanner here, and I've got thousands of slides going back to my childhood, probably tens of thousands actually. and I thought I'm going to scan these slides in. Now, it comes back to what we were talking about before, that I looked at that. I started scanning some slides at random, and I thought, oh, God, this is going to take me. I probably never will finish this in my lifetime. There's so many slides there. So I thought, well, how can I tackle this that makes a lot more sense? So I broke it down into, okay, I'm going to build some themes. So what kind of themes can I have? So it might be themes of travel, and then I'll break down the travel into some more. So travel to country, travel to a city, travel to, or some event. So events might be another theme, and then break down individual events. And then I'll find all those slides that match that theme and then scan them in. And so I was describing this to my client, and she said, oh, there's a process. You ought to write that up. That's a training program there for people that do that. And I thought, well, I'd never even considered that. This was just, I was overwhelmed. So I thought, well, how can I break this activity down? Because I really wanted to do this, and I get a lot of enjoyment out of scanning those slides and then, enhancing the digital images and then displaying those digital images. But it's one of those things where I'd never even considered that was something that might be valuable to others.
Yeah, your photography is amazing. I saw it on your webpage, and it's unbelievable. So if nobody's checked it out and they're listening to this podcast, I would recommend checking it out. So it's amazing. And I was also going to make another book recommendation. We're on a roll today, but there's a book out that's been written by Jeannie Sullivan. It just came out, and it is actually the book I think to have if you're going to create a course. And if all you know is you want to create a course for organizing photography, she breaks it down, and you can actually build your course out in 28 days, and it's outlined chapter by chapter. And just like your organization that you've had, with the pictures, she breaks out how to create a profitable course within a very short, realistic time frame. And I used it for my course, and it proved to be successful. And sounds like you already have the process. And she breaks down how adult learning is and the questions. And at the end of it, you've got your entire deck and communication and course built out. And it kind of feels good that you got something done over the course of just 28 days.
Okay. Well, what's that book called?
It's by Jeannie Sullivan, and I want to say Course Creation in 28 Days.
Okay. Well, we'll look that one up, because that's certainly something I wasn't familiar with. And we'll share
it's such a great book. Yeah, It's fun. And it's that easy read. I love a good easy read that, anybody can get through and feels like you've accomplished something if you just go through the chapter and answer the questions. Yeah, so Create a Course in 28 Days by Jeannie Sullivan.
All right. Well, I'll find that one and also share it in the show notes. Great. Now, leveraging LinkedIn to help your network, you mentioned that as the third part of your course. So tell us a little bit more. Give us some sort of high-level tips there in terms of LinkedIn, because I know I'm doing a lot on LinkedIn these days, and I'm finding, like you, it's quite amazing when you use it to meet people and to have sort of start a meaningful conversation on there, and then take that conversation elsewhere, because things will grow from there if you click with somebody.
Yeah, so LinkedIn has over 600 million users across the world, and I can't think of a larger network to be able to join, a professional network, which is great. So you can reach out that way, and I had actually learned that about 1% of the folks are actually putting information out there. So only 1% of 600 million are actually putting content out there. So if you want to appear to be disruptive, consider posting and being able to share information on LinkedIn. There's only a few people that actually respond to posts. So less than 5% of those are even responding to posts and articles. And the rest of the folks that are on LinkedIn are just kind of what they call lurkers. They're just kind of watching and seeing what you're doing and seeing if your brand is consistent. So, if you want to make a big splash, it's not too hard. Just begin to post some information on LinkedIn. But I would also suggest leading with value and leading with, the lessons that you learned over the past 5 days, or how you were able to solve a customer problem, and just be positive and help build up other people. I think influencing other folks that are on LinkedIn and joining in on conversations, and just being uplifting and helpful is definitely going to take you a lot farther on LinkedIn. And I found it just to be a very helpful platform.
Yeah, it's the numbers are quite amazing, aren't they? If you think of 600 million, that's getting up to near 10% of the global population, which is astounding. And then only 1% of the users are posting, so there's a huge opportunity there. And then only 5% of that 1%, I guess, is what you're saying, are commenting. And I'm finding this. What are your thoughts? Because I see there's kind of a trend there of people tagging a whole lot of other people to try and elicit comments, and so that their posts get in front of onto more feeds. Basically, the algorithm says if it's got a lot of comments or if it's got a lot of likes, I guess it's displayed in more feeds, so people get to see it more. And I'm kind of wondering, I wonder if they'll clamp down on that practice, or whether they'll figure out a way to distinguish the authentic comments. So somebody actually leading with value in their comment. In other words, if there's an article there saying, I was fascinated. Yeah, I find your article fascinating, and here's something that I'd like to contribute to this conversation, rather than just saying somebody going in and saying great article.
Right. Yeah, they actually have, I believe they have an algorithm that's actually being run on it. You need to use at least 5 words in your post. So great article won't work. You can come up with 5 words, like, Jürgen, this was really a great topic. And then if you do the @ sign and incorporate your tag in there, so then now you've got more than 5 words and you've put a link in there with a name, that's going to definitely help you with algorithms. But, I'm sure people have programs that can write all this stuff out and try to manipulate the system, but is that going to work for the long haul? And I don't think it will, but I mean, people make livings in all kinds of different ways, and maybe that'll work for somebody else. It's not really my cup of tea, but yeah, I think for me, just showing up authentically and being who I am, and trying to help other people along the way, just because, so many of other people have helped me along the way. I think that's just who people want to do business with at the end of the day.
Yeah. And it comes back. I mean, I'm reminded of the early days of SEO. I mean, there's still people out there that do it this way, that try to manipulate the search engines by, targeting, understanding how their algorithm works, and then trying trickery to dupe the algorithms, if you like, into ranking their information higher. And yet, if you go back, particularly Google, who are pretty open about how their search works, if you go back and really study that and understand it, it's all about serving information that actually answers the searcher's question. So if you're answering the searcher's question, if you're writing the article for the person searching, for your ideal customer, then you're going to rank higher. You don't have to worry about the algorithm. And I think people are starting to understand that in the SEO space now too, and that the long-term gains, because all of the changes that Google did to cut down on those tricks and the things that were really against the principles of the whole thing, there was outcry in the industry because it impacted on their rankings. And I never saw a change in any of my rankings other than, the organic changes that happen over time anyway. And I thought, well, really, if you do the right thing, it's kind of just the results come back. And I think it's the same here on LinkedIn. And if you take the approach that put up a post that's valuable, if you read somebody else's post, treat it like a conversation. Like if you say something to me now, and I will respond with hooking into that, and I'll say, oh, I'm really curious and learning more about LinkedIn, and tell me more about this aspect. So that's a conversation, and you can do that on LinkedIn. And then, because not only will, particularly if it's my post and you're commenting on it, and I comment back, and that results in a conversation there, then there's lots of comments then.
Yeah, and it's authentic, and that's what they want, and kind of makes our life easier that way, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's right. Because it comes back to what you were saying earlier. Basically, we're breathing then, rather than trying to figure out how can we game this system.
Yes.
Which is like diving underwater at 20 meters and holding your breath and trying to equalize the pressure.
I can't do it.
All right. Well, enough of the metaphors. This has been fabulous, Catherine. I'm really enjoying this. I think it's a good time now, though, to move on to the Buzz, which is our innovation round designed to help our audience, who are primarily leaders and innovators in their field, with some tips from your experience. So I have 5 questions. Hopefully you'll give us some inspiring answers that will lead to action on the part of our listener today.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. What's the number one thing you think anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
Be curious. I think you really need to sit down and ask questions and listen to what the answers are. And, I don't know if you've ever heard of the 5 whys or not, but the 5 whys and the jobs to be done. When you research that information, you have so much innovation that's available to us. If you have the time and the energy to sit down and ask, why are we doing something that way? And ask it 5 times, they'll give you the answer because we've always done it that way. And then why have we always done it that way? Well, it's because we've done X, Y, Z. And so when you ask that why question 5 times, you're going to get down to what that true reason is. And you might be able to create a whole new innovative product or service at the end of that. So being curious and asking why.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the 5 whys process. Although recently I've started to modify it a little bit and use more how and what if, because it's less intimidating. Sometimes, you think of the 5 whys comes back to, I think it was Toyota in 1960s that was their quality control thing, and they were finding problems. So in order to get to the root cause of the problems, they developed this 5 whys questioning technique. But if you think of 2 and 3-year-olds, they're always, oh, why? And usually they get to the point where the parent or the adult will say, oh, I've had enough of this, leave me alone.
I know, my brain hurts, I can't think.
Yeah. which is usually the start of where you turn them off being curious, and that's a bit unfortunate. But as an adult, to ask why a lot, you probably run into that same response fairly quickly. And yet, if you turn it around and use what if, or how does that work, or reframe the question a little bit, I've found that actually leads more easily to conversations.
Yes, I would agree. That sounds like a great spin to the 5 whys.
Yeah. Okay, what's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas?
Definitely go out and see the customer, be with the customer. I was in a agriculture bank for a number of years, and if you want to see how they're using the products, go jump out into the field, into a truck, and see how they're using this stuff. And it is night and day compared to being in the tall building in the city and thinking that you're building something that they want. When you go get in the pickup truck and go talk to the folks using it, the game changes. So I would definitely say getting out of the building and going to sit with your customer.
And asking lots of questions then, right?
Yeah.
All right. Now, do you have a favorite resource you use most often?
Most often since, I guess the last couple of years, I've been using virtual assistants, and they have just really made my life easier, have allowed me to have space to be able to process information and reflect. And that thinking time has been very helpful for me. So as far as improving my productivity, I think even if you are in a corporate environment, you could have a virtual assistant just to handle some of that day-to-day house stuff that you just dread doing. It might be worth, paying somebody a few dollars an hour just to go and take some of that stuff off your plate. So you might be amazed what services are out there that people are willing to help with.
Yeah. And I discovered the whole principle of virtual assistants very early on in my business. And because I'd been working, so I have remote virtual assistants. Because I'd been working remotely in my corporate career for so long, I felt quite comfortable in this concept of remote work. And so I started off with virtual assistants very early on. And like you say, it's really game changing. And I had the same thought as you. I thought, wow, I could have used this in my corporate career. I could have had a couple of these people and just paying them out of my salary. And
that's exactly what I thought. I'd gladly have paid out of my salary to get some of that stuff done.
And then people would think, how do you get all this stuff done? This person is so productive. I thought, and I'd be doing all the stuff that where I add the most value.
Yes, that's brilliant.
Yeah. Okay. Now, what's the best way to keep a client or a project on track?
I think creating accountability, and that accountability could just be, when's the next meeting going to be? What are our takeaways? But creating that accountability, and I'm about to start another project, just a 90-day project, but we need to stay on task. And so I've outlined, I didn't etch it in stone. It's just an outline of the next 90-day calendar. And this is what everybody's accountability is going to be. And that's just a starting point. And they may come back to me and say that we need to tweak a date here or there, but at least we all know on the front end that we're all going to be held accountable.
Yeah, I like the idea of the 90-day calendar. And another book, I'm actually rereading this. I read it quite a while ago, but I'm rereading it now and learning a lot more about it. What is it? The 3-month year or the 12-week year? The 12-week.
It's excellent, isn't it?
Yeah. Which is basically the 90-day calendar in some form, right?
Yeah. And again, everything's just breaking it down into smaller steps, so makes it easier.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, and what's the number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves?
Follow up. So do what you say you're going to do and just follow up.
It's a bit sad, really, if that differentiates you, isn't it? You
I just don't see enough of it.
Yeah.
Do you see it? I'm curious.
No.
I just don't see enough follow up, and it drives me crazy on this side. So I'm like, gosh, could it be that simple? I just need to follow up with people and be proactive.
Yes, but again, it's probably one of those things that we overlook or take for granted, like breathing, and say, well, I do it, but maybe a focus on it or do it in a way that it actually stands out a little bit more, or help other people to do it more easily. Help is a contribution that we can make.
Yeah, I did a follow-up to a gentleman. I was looking, I wanted to stay in touch with him because I wasn't sure if a job opening was going to happen or not. And my way of following up with him was to, he had a situation where the water main broke, the city's water main broke in front of his building. So it flooded. And part of that was the building was shut down. So part of my follow-up to him, just touching base, was to send him a box of towels, ShamWows, that are super absorbent towels.
Yeah.
And sure enough, it was creative enough, and it created a follow-up where, it sat on his desk while he was working through that disaster. And sure enough, it led to a phone call that led to a job. So, just follow up. And sometimes you do have to get a little bit of creative with it.
Yeah, I love it. I'm just thinking that could have backfired, though. It could have been, you might have thought.
Sometimes you got to take a risk.
It in, yeah. All right. Okay. Well, thanks, Catherine. This has been really fabulous. Now, where can people find out more about you? Maybe reach out and say thanks for what you've shared today, and also find out more about your workshop.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for having me. My website is catherinecantey.com. And we also mentioned LinkedIn, and you can find me on LinkedIn under the name Catherine Cantey, and that'll take you back to my website as well.
Excellent. And we'll post those links in the show notes along with how many books? I think we've mentioned 4.
I know we had quite a few. It was fun.
All right. Okay. Now, do you have some parting advice for our listener today?
Never stop learning. Keep reading books, keep watching and listening to podcasts. There's just so many answers that are out there in these books for us. So just never stop learning. Yeah,
I love it. And that's certainly one of my principles. And I always, even little things, sometimes I celebrate and think, I didn't know that. I learned that. So it's kind of like it gives me a buzz, and then to be able to share it with others as well. So that's why I love doing this podcast as well. Or one of the reasons I love doing it is that I learn from each and every one of my guests, and then I get to share it with other people who hopefully learn something and maybe even learn something different, because I'm breathing and they're learning to breathe.
It's been fun. Thank you.
All right. Now, finally, who else should I get on this show and why?
Who else should you get on this show? Jeannie Sullivan, the lady that wrote the 28 book, the course in 28 days. She's pretty much changed my life with that course and helped me transition from corporate into solopreneurism, and broke that down into simple steps, and I took the leap and did it. And Wade Galt, he's another great one. He has the 4-Day Workweek podcast, and I love his work. He has embraced a 4-day work week and teaches other people how to do it. So those are the top 2 that come to mind right now. Great.
Well, do you know Jeannie and Wade?
I do.
Okay. Well, great. We'll get an introduction from you to both of them and bring them on. So certainly, I mean, I'm certainly going to get a hold of Jeannie's book and read that, because that's very much something I need to focus some more on. And so having a conversation with her to follow up on that would be great. And also the 4-day work week. We had Andrew Barnes, who wrote the 4-day work week book for the corporates. We had him on a little while ago. So it'd be great to follow up a conversation with Wade.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun. Both of them are just easy, great people to talk with.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for sharing your time and your insights with us so generously today, Catherine. I've really enjoyed this. It's been fun. We've been talking lots of metaphors as well as specific recommendations and quite a few book recommendations too. So thanks a lot. All the best for the future, and let's stay in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jürgen. I appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed that insightful and really informative conversation with Catherine and took something away from her episode. I love Catherine's approach to reflection, looking through your calendar and interactions with others, and the light system to help identify strengths and where you add most value. And of course, I love the knowing how to breathe metaphor. I'm curious to know what you took away from Catherine's episode. Do leave a comment below the blog post, which you can find at innovabiz.co/Catherine Cantey. That is CatherineCantey, all lowercase, all one word, innovabiz.co/Catherine Cantey. Now, you'll find information there for getting in touch with Catherine, as well as links to her website, her social media pages, and the other resources we spoke about in the conversation. And you'll also find a little comment box there where you can tell me what you took away from today's episode. Now, if you like this episode, I do encourage you to share it with at least 2 other people. Don't keep it for yourself. Don't be selfish, because if there's other people in this world that this episode might help, it's your duty to tell them about it. And tag me in on that share, because I will thank you personally with a special little surprise. Catherine suggested that we have a conversation with Jeannie Sullivan, author of Create a Course in 28 Days, and with Wade Galt of the 3-Day Weekend Club on a future InnovaBuzz podcast episode. So Jeannie and Wade, keep an eye on your inboxes for an invitation from us to the InnovaBuzz podcast, courtesy of Catherine Cantey. Tune in again to the next episodes of the InnovaBuzz podcast, where we've got yet more fantastic guests lined up, including Doctor turned marketer Johnson Emmanuel and leading authority on buying, selling, fixing and growing businesses, Michelle Seiler Tucker. Thanks for listening to this episode. Make sure you subscribe to the show to be reminded of new episodes. It's free to subscribe. Leave a review if you like. Even if you don't like me, I'm okay with that. I'm asking you to leave a review because it helps other people find this show. Go to innovabiz.co to join our marketing transformation community and access a free gift my team and I made for you. It's the Marketing Master Mini Class. We want to give you everything you need to transform your marketing into a human-centered, relationship-focused growth engine. Until next time, I'm Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBiz. Remember, be awesome and keep innovating.